Hello and welcome back to the next episode in our factory building series. I did something a bit naughty. I was meant to be looking at resource nodes, which I will touch on very soon, maybe hopefully in the next episode. But I did some work in the background. Originally it was just for a little bit of testing, but it turned out to work out pretty well, so I carried on and used it. So my apologies for that because it wasn't recorded. But what I'm going to do now is hopefully walk you through the whole process for what I did. Now there's a bit of, let me just show you first. Okay, this is what I've done. We now have a HUD. As you can see in the bottom middle, there is telling you that you got no tool selected. If you press 1 on the keyboard, you have your cable tool. Press 1 again, it's gone. Yeah. And then number 2 is the build tool. Yeah. Obviously they've not got their configurations in for what they're actually going to be doing, and they've got to be tidy up and so forth. But I can now tell you what's what. Now, if this HUD looks a little bit familiar, then you wouldn't be wrong. It's very similar to the I think Space Engineers. So obviously don't go putting a game out that looks identical to Space Engineers. I don't think they like that very much, but it inspired me to make this, and this was just made really quickly. There's nothing special about it. I do have to do a little bit of modification on it. I can see that the bottom of the HUD isn't quite how I want it, but yeah, there we go. We have a HUD. So now I need to explain to you how I've done this. So we'll start at the beginning. I created a couple of images first, and I've put those in this textures folder. Well, there's actually more than a couple, but the first two I created were one for the hotbar background and one for the item background. Yeah, so these ones here are basically in the same set of the free SVG files we downloaded with this bolt lightning in. So there's a building one, these two aren't used yet, and then there's the plug circle bolt one, and all I've done is added a colour to them and resized them so they were like a standard size. They're not all the same size, but I've made them so they're all on a square canvas. So this one is 576 square, this one's 640 square, but it doesn't matter because they'll all go onto a perfectly square canvas, so they'll just scale to where I want them to go, like they have in the hotbar. So let me just open this up, bring this in there. So that's all it is, an image of this box with a corner cut off. Okay, that's all it is. And the other one is very similar, just smaller. There we go. So this one's 64 square. All I did was put a roundy cut out there. Doesn't look great there, but when you zoom out, it don't look too bad. When it's on the hotbar, it don't look bad at all. So this one's 64 square, 64 by 64, and this one is that's 700 by 80, and it was made that size to encompass these in the smaller one by 10, and with a couple of pixels gap, so that 10 fit across virtually perfect. Yeah, I will probably put these into a zip file and put them a link to them in the description. Even though I do check my computer, I will put a disclaimer on there. My computer is checked for viruses, so these should be clean, but you download them at your own risk. But you know, I'm taking every step to make sure that they're clean. My computer is clean. It's checked every day by 3 different virus checkers. So yeah, they should be okay to download. But again, I must stress, it's at your own risk. You know, no coming back to me saying you got a virus. I have no control once they've been uploaded. So there we go. Okay, so for now, let's close those. We don't need to actually view them. There is some work in the first person character and the tool base, which we'll touch on. But first, let's have a look at the new HUD. Oh no, the new widget items. We'll go to the widget items, and what we've made is an item icon, which is an inventory icon. which we're also using for the hotbar. So let's double click and open this, and we'll zoom right in. Okay, there we go. So basically, I've set this to desired screen size, but it might be best if you start making your objects first, then change this from fill screen to desired. Yeah. So I've gave it a name called BP underscore item underscore icon. And then I've created a size box. That size box is 66 units square. The reason that is because I want the icon to be 64 square. Yeah. But I want a bit of padding. Okay. So we've got there 2 pixel padding, so 1 on each side. Yeah. So the size box set to width and height override 66. Is there anything else in there? I don't think there's anything else in there. No. Okay, then I threw in a canvas panel, and that's just set to fill width and height. And the only reason that's used canvas panel because the size box doesn't allow multiple children, just one. So threw in a canvas panel, and then inside that, first thing I threw in was the background image. Now that is the image here, that one I've just shown you. This is the brush here, the inventory item background. Yep. So it's the smaller of the 2 images, the square one in here, this one. Okay, all I've done is thrown that in as the brush image on an image, and I've just renamed it background image, but it is just an image box. I've set the size to 64 by 64 like I wanted, and I've set the alignment here to 0.5 and 0.5 so that it's the alignment's dead center rather than in the top corner or the bottom corner, and then I've anchored it to the middle. Okay, anchor middle, in case you don't know how to do that, and that then keeps that bang in the center at the right size and no offsets. But you must make sure that when you create the background image here, you put 0.5 and 0.5 in the alignment, because if you don't, it'll be over there. Yeah, it'll be, you know, looking stupid because it uses one of the corners depending on where you choose. If it's 0 by default, it'd be that bottom corner. So we want it smack bang in the middle of the pivot, which is, it's not really a pivot but anchor point, 0.5, 0.5. There we go. Okay, let me just save that just so it doesn't mess up. Then I created a text box down here. Okay, and I just used the standard font that comes in with Unreal. It's called Roboto. I've set it to bold, and I've set the size to 10. I've gave it a slightly greyish, bluish kind of look to sort of match the aesthetic. You can see all the hex, the linear, and the RGB here. Yeah, I'm not going to leave that. I'll leave it on nice RGB. So yeah, pause it here if you want to get the exact colour. Doesn't really matter, it's up to you. So that's the colour set, that's the font set, so size 10. Then what I've done, I have anchored it to its bottom right. Okay, and with that, oh, can't select it now. There we go. So with that, all I did, size to content, and this one is actually bound. I'll show you the binds in a minute, because there's probably a couple of them you need to look at. So yeah, there we go. We've got this number, size to content. I've left the alignment in the bottom right on this one, and all I've done is offset from the corner. Yeah, so I've anchored this to the bottom right, and all I've done was set the corner, offset it by 10 on the X and 16 on the Y. Seems to be a nice position. It gives it nice and clear view there. Then there's an image box. Again, this one I've aligned to the top left. Okay, so I've anchored this inside the canvas panel to top left. Okay, I've give it an offset of 4 and 4, so that will bring it 4 pixels down and 4 pixels across. and then I've set it to size 48, so it fits in there without going over. Can you see? So size 48 square, position X and Y to offset it. If you look here, if I put 0 on the X, it's right in there. So I'll just put 4 pixels in to allow it to move over. So it's kind of roughly where I want it, like an offset to the left slightly. Then I've added in something called a border. Now the border object is expanded to the canvas to fit. So I filled both. You can set the colour on opacity of the brush, but it doesn't matter. The size is 64 anchored top left with no offset, so it basically fills all the way around the edge. But what I've done here, I've come in and I have changed the alpha somewhere. No, I've left it on. No, it's there. You could just about make it out, but all the dotted lines are in the way. You could just make out a bit of red. Okay, now that's how I've built this. So I've just layered up a size box, a canvas panel, then I've got myself a background image to fill the canvas panel, and then we've set a slot number anchored to the bottom right, size of 10, change the colour slightly, and then an image again anchored to the top left with a space of 4 and 4 and set to 48 square for the image, and a border again filling the whole canvas. Nothing special about the border. You don't have to have red in the colour. I was just trying out a few things. Okay, so that's the alignment I left in the top corner, and I've just anchored it to the top left or centre. It doesn't make no difference. See what I mean? It just fills because I've got it to fill here. There, I've set the horizontal and vertical line to fill, so it doesn't make no difference. So that's there. So now what I'm going to show you is a couple of bindings. Now before I do, I don't know if you've used the widget editor before, but up here you can go into its graph, so you can use code. Okay, which makes this a little bit more powerful. Background image and image are both the images here. So you've got image and background image. So image will be our icon, and the background image is our slot background. Okay, let's go back into the graph, top right. I've created a few variables. One is an integer called slot number. This is going to be used to tell it which slot number this currently is. Yeah. Then we have an icon, which allows us to set an image, and then we have an icon opacity. Now this has got the wrong name because it was going to be the icon opacity, but I changed it because we didn't need it. So it is now the linear color, and that is linked, if we come in here, to our border. So in our border, I've set here binding. So I haven't hit create, I haven't hit remove, any of this. I've just clicked on this because it matches, and it's called a linear color. Yeah. Let's have a look in the graph. A linear color type. Yeah. So that then matches the same as the one in the designer. So then you can just click on here and click on that one. So whenever whenever this value changes, it will update on the widget automatically. Best way, rather than trying to use code. There's no point. Just let it automatically update. And then the same with the icon. The icon is bound to the image. So if we pick up image here and go to brush, and then at the end of brush, I've bound it to icon. Yeah. And it's a texture 2D is the type. Show you that there, texture 2D. Yeah, because we're using them directly from the texture pool. We don't actually have to use a material. You could just show the raw texture. There's no point creating texture material just for an icon. So yeah, it's basically grabbing one of those textures and putting it in there. Now that's done in the first person character, or in the tool, sorry, which is within the first person character. Slot number we assign to tell it what the slot number is, which also changes this number here. I've just called it HP underscore slot, hotbar underscore slot. And again, I have bound the text to slot number. So click the bind button here and click slot number. That binds that to that number, so whenever that changes, it updates here. And just to show you that working, when I generate them, because they're not in there in the HUD, you'll see in a minute, they're not actually in the HUD. They're generated at runtime. It creates the 10 hotbar buttons. Okay, let's stop that. So that's our item icon. If there's anything you don't understand, drop a note in the comments and I'll try and explain it a little bit better. But it's just a standard object with a new widget, user widget, with a size box set to 6666, so 66 squared. Then a canvas panel that fills to hold all these things. Then we've got a background image at 64 squared, so it's just slightly padded off the edge. And then a number in the bottom right for the slot number, an image for our image, and a border to go around the edge. The border is actually for the highlights. So when I hit play, if I press number 1, you can see that we have a highlight here. Yeah. And if you press number 1 again to cancel the tool, it goes off, and vice versa. You can flip between the two tools and they highlight and de-highlight. Okay, that's all that border is for. But just remember the bindings, that's all. So you might want to go back to that point and just re-watch it if you've forgotten what the bindings were. There's no point me just repeating it, when you can just press rewind and pause and all the good stuff. So we just save that back off. So then what I did is I then created, I edited our HUD. Let's bring that in. So here we are, our original HUD. And in the middle, I've created this box. This is just a canvas panel that's filled the whole area. That was already there, and it already had our image and our electrical symbol. Yeah, those are probably going to change. I will rename that to be our reticule, as they call it, a dot. So what I did, I created this hotbar. Okay, now this is just a horizontal box, and I anchored it to the center, the middle bottom, as you can see here. Yeah, so that's anchored to the bottom at the middle of this canvas panel. And what I did is then, I don't know why I actually used the horizontal box, to be honest. I could have just used the size box and then the canvas panel, but I think I was going to originally use it for more items, and I may do yet, so it may change a little bit. But anyway, you can use a size box here and just anchor it to the bottom, and then all I've done is offset the Y up by -25. Okay, I set the width to 100. Oh no, I click size to content, sorry, I did click size to content because I'm using a size box. So the only one you want to worry about here is the anchor to the bottom middle and the position -25. These sizes don't matter because of size to content. And to set the size, I've used a size box, and I've width over, so I've set it to auto fill, and the width override is 800 and the height is 150. That gives us a bit of spare space above the toolbar and a little bit either side. Yeah, so 800 by 100, no bindings at all. Inside that, I put another canvas panel, because obviously a size box can only hold one child. So the canvas panel is then put inside there, and it's just set to fill as normal. Nothing special against that. Yeah, so there's our canvas panel. It doesn't matter about the anchors either on that, because it just automatically fills. Okay, I don't think actually canvas panel has anchors, does it? No, it doesn't. It automatically just fills or aligns and sets however you want. So inside that, I've just set up an image, I believe. Yeah, an image. And this one is set to 710. Now I did that because I was having a little bit of problem getting this bar in to the right position, but it looks like I managed to do it now, so that's not too bad. So I'll set it to 710 width, and I've set the height to 80. Now this is just the background, yeah, and it's just that other image, the hotbar image from our textures, this one, the larger one of the two, yeah, just set as its background. Again, there's no bindings or anything, it's just set there as the image, yeah. Inside that, I then have a uniform grid. It's a uniform grid panel, and what I did, I centered it along its bottom and then along the center. Obviously I want it centered across the middle here, but I've actually done it from its bottom, so I've now aligned this to the bottom of the grid. Now I wanted to change this, so just to show you, I want to bring this up, so we're going to bring this up by about 4. No, sorry, it's going to be -4 to go up. It might not be enough, so we're going to go -5, no, -6. Yeah, that's better. -6. It's a little bit more raised off the bottom now, and we can compile and save that, and we'll see that in action now. There we go. We've got a bit of a gap down the bottom. Let's go back into the HUD. Right, so back into the HUD. So we got we've renamed this, and we've also ticked to say that it's a variable. Okay, now the size I've set to 66 tall, because that's the size of our images. That's the size of our small image for our item. Sorry, the size of the widget for our item, not the actual image, the actual widget for the item. And I've set another size of 678. Now, I used a calculator to do this, and you can do the same. Let's do this. So we've got 10 images, and they're 66 wide, which is 660. But then we want a gap of 2 between them, but there's only going to be 9 gaps between 10 objects, isn't there? So 9 times 2 is 18, yeah, because I only want 2 pixels gap. Add that back onto the 660 that we just did, 678. That's how I got that value, yeah. So that is exactly the right width to hold 10 items with 2 pixel gap. No bindings, nothing special. No, so that's it. And then all I did was then add a text box, so no text block it's called in here. So a text block, I've centered it on the canvas panel, and then I've just done a little bit of an offset. It's -20 there. I've set the size to content, and all I did was type in no tool in the text. But then this is bound, and I'll just show you that one. This one has, ignore that for now because we need to look at that in a minute. Yeah, I'm going to be cruel. So I've set this active tool text, and I've set it to the term text. Okay, active tool text variable to text, yeah. And then in the designer, I've gone to bind active tool text, yeah. That means now I have access to this text from outside of the widget. Okay, that's all that's for. So I hope that was quite straightforward. It's just an addition of a horizontal box that could have just been a canvas panel. I could have just placed it, a size box, and then a canvas panel in that to hold everything, and then the background, the hotbar itself, and some text telling you what tool there is. And you can see just in the middle, the tool is cable tool, building tool, cable tool, building tool. Okay, and that's basically the HUD. So now we need to show you what happens when the HUD is built. Okay, so let's go back into the graph, and all I've got here is, I think it's the construct strip. So let's have a look. Yeah, so event construct. Now I'm going to have no more than 10 HUD hotbar items. So what I did was I first created a for loop, not a for each, a for loop. What the for loop allows you to do is choose a start number and an end number. Okay, now as this is 0 based again, I need to take this number, so the last number, which would be 10 to us, we want 10 boxes, and deduct 1, because obviously the first one isn't 1, it's 0. So 0 to 9 inclusive is actually 10 objects. Okay, so first index 0, second index, last index 9. Then I create a widget icon, and that widget icon is from class item icon there. Yeah, and that's widget items, this one here. Yeah, that's this one. So it's now going to create 9 of these because we're doing a for 10 of these because we're doing a for loop. Yeah, so I'll go from 0 to 9, which is 10. So there'll be 10 of these will now be created inside the HUD. So what it does, it creates that item. Then what it does is we compare the index here. Now the reason for that is, well, the reason for that is I'll show you afterwards. But let's just say we're comparing it with 9, which is the last number in the index, yeah? And if it's less than 9, so if it's between 0 and 8, all we do is add 1 to the index number because it's 0 based, but we don't want 0 at the beginning because on a keyboard it starts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and zeros at the end. We need to put the 0 at the end. So this is what all this is doing. So it might look a little bit complicated. So take a screenshot of that and you'll understand it more now when I explain it, I hope. So out of here is a copy of our widget. Yeah. So this brings out our widgets. So for now, let's just ignore what happens if this is 9. If it's less than 9, 0 to 8, all it does, it sets the slot number of that widget, which if you remember is in here, slot number. Okay, now that number is automatically updating the number here. Yeah, it's also storing it for its own use so it knows what it is as well. So it's kind of useful in 2 cases. So we get the return value of the new widget we've just made, the new item icon, and we're setting its slot number plus 1. So 0 will become 1. So that'll be our first one. So when I hit play, if you look here, it's adding 1 to that 0 because the object is 0 based. So we're adding 1 and that becomes this number 1 here. And it also identifies this slot as number 1. Yeah. Hope that's straightforward. So we add 1 to it. Set the slot number to the new widget we just created. And then what we do is we're also dragging the same widget across here and we're adding it to the hotbar. Okay, so it's going to do this 10 times. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. The index we're using, because we're only using 1 row in the hotbar, the index for the row will always be 0, but we're setting the index, as this is 0 based, to the index in the column. So that's column 0, yeah, but it's numbered 1 for the keyboard. Yeah, that's a visual thing, and it's also a pragmatic thing. In a minute, I'll show you that in a minute. So if the number's less than 9, so 0 to 8, he will add 1, so we know what key it is, and it will set that to the new widget, and it will then store the widget into our UG hotbar, which is this object there, UG hotbar. It will store them in there, yeah, and it stores them as children. I hope that's not too confusing. But if the number is 9, which is the last number, well, we don't want the number 10 because that if we add 1 to 9, it'd be 10. So all we do in this instance, if it's equals, we set the slot number to 0, because the 0 is the basically in the 10 position on the keyboard. It's after the 9. So that's the only difference. So if it's less than 9, we add 1, so it matches the keyboard position. But if it's equal to 9, we set it to 0. Yeah, and then we put that in to the widget, and then we we add the child to the hotbar. So it'll go through them. It'll add 10 objects at index 0 to 9, and we'll add 1 to each one, which matches the keyboard number 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, as at the top of the keyboard, and then the last one, which would be potentially 10 if we added the 1, we'll just set that to 0 just to make sure that, you know, it doesn't show up a bit strange. So then if we look here again, it's all it's done. If I hit shift and F1, there we go. So instead of putting 10 there because we're adding 1, we've ignored it because it's now 9, so we just change it to a 0. Yeah, but it's in slot 9 technically. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's why we can't add 1 to it. We just set it to 0, and that's just for the keyboard purposes. Okay, so that's the event construct. Yeah, all that is in the event construct. So leave that again on the screen for you so you can have another look. Again, if you're getting a bit confused, just give me a shout. Drop a comment and I could try and explain it a little bit easier, but it gets a little messy, all these branches and things, but unfortunately they are necessary. But you know, once you start looking at it, you think, oh, it's a little bit easier than I thought. Okay, so that, as far as I can tell, is the whole of the HUD. I'll leave the HUD open and the icon open in case we look at that. We're now going to go to the BBC tool base, I believe, and this here. No, let's go to the first person character. Let's go into the first person character. Now this one's a very large. I need to tidy this up and start putting some next sequences in, make it look a little bit easier. So we'll start at the beginning. So this is set from, let's find references. There. Okay, so at the end of our begin play on our character, I've come all the way to the end. After we've done the tool HUD, we now do the hotbar. Yeah, and it's just a function called set hotbar. There's nothing passed to it, nothing returned. It's just a function that sets hotbar. Okay, so in set hotbar, we do a get all components by class, and those components are going to be the BPC tool base, the original base of our tools, basically. Yeah. So we get all of those. I've plugged in self there because I thought I had an issue with finding the objects. I don't think there's an actual issue. Let me just compile that. Just get rid of that. Yeah, it still works. That's good. I thought I was having an issue, but I couldn't debug properly. So it was making me think it wasn't quite working how it should do. Anyway, it's working. So we get all components of class of the BPC toolbase. We loop through them. And then what we do, we make sure that we've got a valid HUD, which is quite important, I guess. Then we get from there a reference to our hotbar. Yeah, because that's the important slot. This is what we're doing, setting up the hotbar. Then we get all its children. Now, as the children are only going to be BPC items, which are these, because we used this code to make them, didn't we? The only children of the uniform grid is BP item icons, because this is what we've added there. Try not to accidentally add one in by hand because it might mess that up. Okay, one place. So back in our first person character, set hotbar. So we've now got a list of all our children. So there should be 10 in there. And they're at values 0 to 9. Yep, in slot 0 to 9 because it's 0 based arrays. So we've got to our first tool. And now what we're going to do is compare that to a matching item icon. So to do that, we for loop them, go through them all, but we've done it with a break. This is a for loop with break, so that once we find the correct one, we break out. Yeah. We cast to BP item icon. This. The reason is because it's just children here. It could be a widget object reference. That's all, and comes out as a widget object reference. But we need to get access to all its variables, so we cast it to BP item icon. Okay. Then we come out and we do a branch, because what we're going to do is check that the slot number on this item matches the slot number on our tool base. Now I'll just show you that, because I've added that in, and it's in config, and I've added in config 3 variables: hotbar image, hotbar slot, which will be the slot number, and hotbar icon. Now, hotbar icon was one I was going to use. I don't think I actually used it in the end. BP item icon. Yes, I did use this. This is to store its own information to its own hotbar. That's all. So this is a link to a BP icon, just so it remembers it. So that's going to be the slot number, and that's going to be the image. So if I just open up one of the old ones just to show you, and that's in HUD widget items. No, that's what I'm doing. I want to open up one of my tools, don't I? So blueprints, tools, and let's go for the cable tool. Oop. Open this up. So what I've done is, obviously you can't see them here, but in your class defaults, make sure that's highlighted, because you can change to class settings as well. But class defaults, hotbar image, so I've set that to one of my textures here, and it was the bolt. So now our cabling tool has that as an icon. This is going to be in hotbar slot 1. Okay, but it doesn't know what icon it is yet, or where, where it is. It should be in slot 1, but we're just going to get a reference to it there. That's set at runtime. Okay, and I'll show you that shortly. But yeah, I've just set the image and its slot number. And I've done the same on our builder tool. As you can see, it's got a different image, just a texture image, and it's got a different hotbar slot, which is number 2. Yeah, and again, this part's set at runtime. So let's close that. I'll leave the other one open just for now. So, like I said, it's finding them all, checking that its slot number matches the hotbar slot number on the tool. If it does, which it should have a matching reference, then if it doesn't, it goes then. It falls off the end here. There's nothing on false, so it'll just go then here to the next one. Yeah, but if it's true, we set our hotbar icon, and we get that from our BP icon, and we set that to our reference inside our object, inside our BPC tool. We now set, let me just bring that up, we set this hotbar icon to, there it is, hotbar icon to the image, so the object stored here. So now we've got a reference to this within the actual tool, so the tool can access its own hotbar item. Okay, so what it will do then, it then sets the icon to the image, the hotbar image, which again, we come all the way back to the beginning. We get it from our tool. So our tool comes along here, comes right to the end, and we get the image from the tool, which is the one we saved here, hotbar image, and we put that inside our icon here. So our reference, so we've put what basically we've got a reference to the hotbar icon, so we're now putting this into whatever reference we've got here. So then it knows what image to use. So it's a little bit confusing the way it's put. I will pause in a bit so you can have a quick look at each stage. So the hotbar image is then going inside our reference to the hotbar icon on the hotbar itself. Then this here is a local variable called full opaque, and it's a linear color. And we set that there to icon opacity. Now, like I said, that's going to be renamed to the border on or off. And I'm setting the all this is, don't worry about the color, we're setting the alpha to 0 so that the border switched off. That's basically all it's doing. So icon opacity is linked to border in our bind here, the brush color, icon opacity, yeah. And all we're doing at this stage right now is we want to make sure that this full opaque that we're putting in there, that it doesn't matter what the color is, but the alpha must be 0. We turn the border off basically, and then all we're doing at the end here, we're coming back and say, right, we have found one, break, and then come to the next object and find and carry on, do the same thing. So let me just zoom out a bit. So that's the first part of it. So if you can get yourself a screenshot of that. Components, looping through components, make sure the HUD is valid, and get all the children for the hotbar. Yeah. Then cycle. Let's see. Let me close the details window. See if I can. No, I can't get that in. So we'll just come to there. So then, for each through all the children, cast to item icon because it doesn't know what type of widget it is, so we're casting it to it, and we're then checking the slot bar. The slot number matches the one on the hotbar. Yeah, if it does, then we're telling our cable tool what its hotbar is, what its hotbar icon is, giving it a reference to the object. We're then setting its image with the appropriate image, and we're making the border opaque so you can't see the border, and then we're just ejecting out. So I hope there's been enough screen time there for you to get a copy of that. I will tidy that code up at some point. I'll probably use a sequence on it. So that's what happens inside the first person character. Now inside the tool base we have had a little bit of code, and it's on the activate tool. We've done it on the tool base because then we don't have to go through all the tools like the cable tool and do it again. So when we activate the tool, we do our usual, tell it whether it's activated. Then we do a validated get on our hotbar icon because there might not be anything in there. There's been a problem somewhere. There might not be anything in there. So I use a validated get. I then have this set icon opacity. Okay, this is the border again. So if we're selecting it, we want to turn the border on. So if you double click in here, it gives you a color picker. I could have actually put an on-off setting here, and I might do that later if I wanted to have a bit of customization. But for now, I chose myself a border color. So that was the color I chose there. And I set the alpha to 1. Yeah. So now the icon opacity, which is the border, I do really need to, let's rename that now because it really is not very intuitive. I keep saying I will change it. There's no time like the present, is there? So border opacity, and oh yeah, it doesn't automatically change bindings. So we come to the designer, and now we're going to change this binding for the border. So highlight the border, come to brush color, down here and change that to border opacity. It automatically then sets that. Compile and save. That's all we've done. So it's called border opacity now, and that will make more sense. Okay, border opacity. So on this one, we choose our color and we make sure the alpha was all the way up to 1. This is on selection, yeah, on activate. On deactivate, we'd still do the same validated get, but we set the border opacity. Doesn't matter what color, we set the opacity alpha down to 0, which makes it invisible. That's all that does. Once we've set that, we then want to set the active tool text, which is, come to the designer, this piece of text here, yeah. So what it will do, we'll get the name. I've added in name as a text now. I can't remember if I had it there before, but it might have been as a name before. It's now, I've changed that to a type of text. Okay, so as it's now text, I can just plug that straight into the active tool text, and as it's bound to this variable, it will automatically pick it up whenever it's changed. So all we're doing is getting our HUD, and we're setting the variable active tool text to the name of the tool, yeah, the default name of the tool. And on deactivate, we're doing the same thing, but we're setting it to no tool. Yeah, I could put select in it, so yeah, just to show you that working. So before it said no tool, and I will say no tool selected. I'll compile that and save. Let me just bring this out a little bit, so you should just be able to see that on there. Get yourself a screenshot of that. Let me move across and zoom in. So to get this there, you just drag off and type in set border opacity, yeah, and then click on that. You don't have to double click, it's just single click. Doesn't matter what the color is on the bottom one, as long as the alpha's down to 0, which makes it see-through, yeah, here. Or you can set the color, so if you want it like a red, you could choose that and it comes up in the box. Yeah, that's the color of the border when the tool's selected. Okay, hopefully that's been on screen long enough. Okay, so yeah, name is now a text. We've changed that. We added in these. So that's a texture 2D hotbar image. Hotbar slot is just an integer, and hotbar icon is a BP item slot, one of the new, sorry, a BP item icon, one of the new ones we've made. Yeah, it's just so we can store a reference in the tool directly to it, so we can set it here much easier, and we don't have to do anything at all in here because it's all done. All this is done here, so there's nothing to actually do. These just work exactly the same because the base is handling all this. Now let me have a good think now. I think that might be all of it. This has come on longer than I thought, but I think that's everything. I don't think I've really got to tie that up. That's enormous. Yeah, so the only variable here is a local one saying full opaque, and that's just to, actually that should be full 0 opaque. It's actually the opposite way around, but never mind. Yeah, that's everything. That then gives you a HUD because it's all on our original HUD anyway. Everything is generated automatically. Hit play and you have a HUD, and one that highlights when you've selected an object. It doesn't look spectacular, but it actually looks nice and clean. It's viewable, and yeah, it's usable. And then we've got obviously room there for up to 10 different tools. There is a possibility we might change the bindings, but as these aren't going to be tools that you find, they're going to be tools that you have permanently. They may be upgradable, but as they're going to be ones that you have permanently, they may automatically be set to those tools. But I may allow you to change the values around, but I don't know yet. We'll have a think about that. But tools are all working as usual. I can turn off the I could turn off the collisions now on that, can't I? But yeah, it's working. And also the right click turns it off as well, because obviously it's just the same code. So there we go. Yeah. What we could also do is change the name of that image that comes up to whichever tool we're using to match whatever image, which is why I got those other icons. They're not in use yet, but they are here. See, can build, can't build. Yeah, so that might show on the screen depending on where we're aiming. Just keep changing, and that we know that now. We know how to do that. We know when it's valid or not. So yeah, that's what I was thinking of there. Valid build spot, not a valid build spot. Okay, so yeah, that's it for this episode. So I hope that was helpful to you and give you an insight to how to build a HUD. You can do yours any way you like using the same concepts. You may even find a better way of doing things, but I found that nice and clean and easy, to be honest. It might not look it to you because you didn't build it from scratch, so you've got to learn somebody else's thoughts. But that would seem like the cleanest way that I could do it and make it simple. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you in the next episode. So take care and goodbye.